Theme song. Hello, everyone.
I'm Carl.
And I'm Em.
Welcome to our podcast discussing all of the latest books. This is our 6th episode, and we will be discussing At First Sight by Nicholas Sparks.
This can be read as a standalone or as a sequel, so we just want to throw that out there before anybody reads it.
We didn't know that until Megan was like, why are you not reading the first one? We were like, what first one?
Yeah, which, I mean, honestly, if you have read this, you already know there's not much missing information that makes it important to read the first one. So if you want to, stop here, go read the first one. If not, continue listening. We promise to give you all of our honest opinions on all the characters, chapters, and scenarios. We don't mean any harm to any of the authors. This is solely our opinion. We promise to call them like we read them.
Period. I don't know if you saw, but I'm big about dedications and books and stuff and little quotes at the beginning. And this one really was dedicated to his children. And I just thought, that's nice. But it's such like a classic author move. You know what I mean? I guess I'm used to fantasy books where they always have something good in there. So I don't know.
I was just going to read the excerpt from the back of the book, just in case anybody is curious about what it will be. And there was a few things Jeremy Marsh was sure he'd never do. He'd never leave New York City, never give his heart away after barely surviving one failed marriage, and never become a parent. Now Jeremy is living in a tiny town of Boone Creek, North Carolina, engaged to the love of his life, Lexi Darnell, and is anticipating the start of their family. Just as everything seems to be settling into a blissful pattern, a mysterious email sets off a chain of events that test the strength of Jeremy and Lexi's love. And as they cope with the doubts, fears, and romance of the newly wedded life, Jeremy will discover an extraordinary truth. The emotions that can break your heart is sometimes the very one that heals it. So I'm going to be honest, I have pretty much every one of Nicholas Sparks' books, so I was very excited to read one that I have not read before. I'm going to, of course, save my ratings to the very end, but it was definitely not what I expected, that's for sure. And it was not Nicholas's usual high, low, high kind of book as it normally was. It was a very short, I feel, high on the very end. But you have anything you want to add before we jump into it?
I will say, I just realized this, that the character Lexi is named after one of his kids, and that is so strange to me. But
it is
a little bit,
considering where we go. But yeah.
But it says the character was inspired by his wife, but he used his daughter's name. That's a little weird.
It is a little weird. So in chapter 1, we kind of dive into learning about their relationship, which I'm sure we'd have more context if we knew there was a prequel to the sequel.
I just wanted to add in the prologue that I loved the first, like the opening line of the prologue is love at first sight, truly possible. It kind of really does set the entire book, especially knowing now that there's a first book. I feel like there is probably stuff we don't know, but we just jumped straight into the story. And so like this opening scene for me really helped me understand that we weren't just diving head first.
Yeah, and I like a book that you can read it individually and as part of a story. And honestly, I read it all the way through and had no earthly clue. And you were even, I think, 9 chapters in and didn't even know. So I think it really is good that you can do that. And it still gives that context that you still understand what's happening. So really, they just had like a little short fling. At the beginning of this book, they had just found out that Lexi was pregnant. And I'm quite sure what the contributing factor mainly was.
I would say the pregnancy. But, I mean, they might have, like, been really into each other anyways, but to get hitched, move in together, change your entire life, that had to be because of the baby.
Well, but honestly, Jeremy, he really didn't have a life that was set in New York. I mean, as a writer, he really could be anywhere he needed to be.
Yeah, he preferred the city. Yes. And he had his entire family in New York.
True, but he could still uplift himself and move without it being a big deal. Lexi was not as able to do that just because of her job.
Well, she could move too. She's just a librarian.
I mean, a small town librarian is probably really hard to replace.
No.
I doubt they're going to pay good money for a random librarian to come move to their town to run the library.
I don't have to. Somebody else in that town could be a librarian. It's not that hard.
Maybe there's not somebody else with that hopes and aspirations to be a librarian.
I'm sure there's some little old lady that would do it. Probably for free. It's funny because, okay, just to preface this entire thing, I grew up in a town very similar to like where the book is set. And so I keep thinking of people where I'm from who's a librarian who could take it over. So I just keep getting tickled because the way they were describing it, I was like, is this me? You know that sound on TikTok, like, is this play about us or whatever? That's what I kept thinking.
They barely know anything about each other as well.
When he didn't know her middle name or how old she was, I was like, what am I reading? What are we getting into?
I had the same thoughts whenever I read it the first time. I
Her
was
middle name?
very confused.
Like, she told you
Yeah.
she's pregnant and you don't even say, okay, well, what's your middle name? How old are you? I think I would have said, how old are you before I slept with you?
I mean, I get that. It was a little weird where he was uplifting his whole life not knowing her middle name.
And here's my thing. Once you find out she's pregnant, I feel like there should have been, and I guess it did happen once he moved there, but I feel like there should have been a period of time on the phone or something. They were yapping, and they could have been like, hey, my middle name is such as, let's play 20 questions. Maybe that's just a generation I'm from, because we did that my entire time growing up. But I would have been like, what's your middle name? I feel like I should know that when someone asks.
Yeah. I mean, especially if you're going to marry them. Yeah, probably.
If I'm going to move from New York City to Boone Creek, North Carolina, I'm going to need your middle name, your date of birth, your address. I'm going to need to know all of your identifying information. What if she had an emergency and he was the only person there? He needs to know that.
Well, I mean, at least her blood type at that point, yeah.
Oh, something. They were total strangers. True. This is a man she plucked off the street. It was in the cemetery.
Well, that is a weird place to meet for sure. I mean,
that's creepy. He was doing a story, you know. She was just there visiting her parents.
I guess that's the new matchmaking service. Let's go to the graveyard.
That's how Elena and Damon met.
Hey, then you may have good luck.
No, that's what I'm saying.
We need to get you in the graveyard. Okay. So then we learn a little bit in chapter 2 about how he had proposed to her on the top of the Empire State Building and that she was going to go meet his family. Then mainly it didn't seem like she was nervous to meet them, but mainly about what their opinion of her would be. She made the comment that she thought maybe they would feel like she was taking him away from them, which is understandable if your whole life is rooted in this one area and then all of a sudden this girl comes along and moves you several states away. It could come across as that.
I think that added to it because they didn't know about the pregnancy either. I think if they had known about the pregnancy, it would have seemed more reasonable for him to move all the way across the country. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yes. And I get where she was coming from because I do think that that would be a lot. Not only that, but you just found out you're pregnant. You're asking him to pick up and move. And then on top of it, you have to meet his family and not disclose your big secret to them. So I think that's a lot of pressure to have on somebody.
It had to be super scary. Can I meet them in 6 months? Because I'm a little overstimulated. I need a break.
That's a lot for somebody to have thrown at them all in a short period of time. So in chapter 3, I have a comment because the town hall meeting that happened, like the way they got people to show up was that they offered bingo after the fact.
This is Emily. And when I read this, I thought this is exactly how they get Emily to show up.
I read that and I was like, I guess that's one way to do it. I do like bingo for anybody wondering. It's a very fun pastime. You spend a lot of money not winning money, but you know, it's a fun occasion to do. I guess it works because they said it was kind of crowded, but we also find out that, is it Lexi's grandma?
Yes.
We find out that she has a spiritual connection where she can kind of predict the gender of babies as well as know when somebody's pregnant.
She does. She guesses the gender and the due date. She should make money off of it. That's what I would do.
So there is a moment where she kind of pulls Lexi aside and reveals like, oh, congratulations. And she just like senses that she's pregnant. And so basically she tells her
That's how you read that?
Yeah.
That's not how I read that.
How'd you read it?
She already told her.
I don't know.
Also, I just like to add that when I read some of this, I really put on the country accent. I did. It was bad. And I got tickled when it talks about the faster they talked, the more southern they sounded. And despite Jeremy's attempts to keep up, he was unable to follow everything they were saying. I was like, yeah, it happens.
See, I didn't picture like a real like southern accent as far as like our accent. I imagine more so like a Cajun accent and really difficult to sometimes understand. So the other thing that we kind of determine is that she also doesn't want the town to know that she's pregnant.
I thought
Instead of
that was so strange.
I get it though, because I get the thing. So everybody's going to talk.
But I still think like everybody's going to talk anyways. And she says at one point everybody's going to talk anyways. But she's still, you have to go stay with the Jed, who you're literally scared of. Also, why are you scared of this man? And admitting that you're scared of this man. I guess I didn't picture Jed the way he pictured him. I don't know. But I thought he was talking about, they felt they were sneaking around like teenagers.
Reminded me of from the Addams Family, the really big guy. I think he was Frankenstein.
The uncle?
No, not Uncle Fester, but he was like the butler, and he looked like Frankenstein, and he just went around grunting all the time. That's how I imagined him, as just like walking around grunting at people. So I can understand where maybe that's a little scary that he doesn't speak words most of the time, but
I don't know. I guess I was thinking your typical man is not going to admit they're scared of another man. So it made me wonder if we're not getting a full description that would really do him justice. You know what I mean?
Well, and I mean, there may have been some encounter in the first book that we're not sure of to indicate the reason why it happened, because I do say that in the first book that basically he was in this town for his research. So, I mean, there may have been some kind of interaction that made Jed not really like him. So we're not aware of.
I think he might also be secretly in love with Lexi.
See, I imagine him as an older guy. Like, I didn't imagine him.
Really? The way he gets bashful when Lexi says something to him, I was like, oh, he loves her. Okay. Everybody loves Lexi. The way she keeps some of the secrets, and I'm sure we'll get more into that later, but it really bothered me. I was convinced the entire book, and maybe that was the point, but I was convinced the entire book she had like some big secret, some big secret we didn't know about.
Yeah, I also thought that as well. So we also discover kind of into the next chapter is that Jeremy has really bad writer's block once he moves to the town, which I'm not going to pinpoint on very much because it was kind of one of those repetitive things again.
Yeah, it was.
That I feel like they concentrated way too much on it.
Especially because he had articles banked. Yes. And so it didn't really matter that he had writer's block. I'm tired of hearing about it. I don't care.
Yeah, I mean,
just tell me what her secret is.
So we get this story about how they're trying to mesh their lives together. So talking about buying a house, buying a car. This is really the chapter that I started not liking Lexi. I felt she became very possessive. She was very dictating on, this is the car we're going to buy, which I understand the car. He was wanting a sports car. I get that. But it was very demanding.
She was kind of controlling.
Yes, she wanted things her way. She wanted the house she wanted the car she wanted him to wear the clothes that she wanted him to wear. It was very, very possessive to me, and I did not like that storyline whatsoever.
Well, and I didn't like it. It was such a big storyline for several chapters and like building up the suspense, and then it really just kind of went away. Yeah. And the scene that really got me was where he wanted to order the steak, and she was like, "Ooh, that's 2 steaks. You're gonna order 2 steaks," and I was like, "Girl, let him eat." That's what got me the most. And then she was like, "Oh, I was going to try a bite." You just dogged him. Yeah. And I thought he ordered something different. I was mad. I was like, okay, no. The car, I understand. The house, even maybe like, if it was her little home was run down, then I can see buying a new house. Maybe not the biggest one in the whole town. But when we got to that steak scene, I was like, let that man eat his steak. You ain't even paying the bills.
That's the part that bothered me about the bills, is that she was making all these demands, but with his money. He did not have a say in half of the stuff, and he was the one spending all the money. I mean, you're making all these demands about this house, and you want to be able to remodel this, and it rubbed me a really wrong way.
On top of that, too, the amount of spending she did on the repairs and then on buying baby clothes. And don't get me wrong, I understand the excitement. I have 3 nieces, and I actually got 4 coming up in a couple days, and a nephew. And I love to shop for them. I get crazy sometimes too. But also, if you're buying a house and buying a car and getting married and all these other things that are expensive, then go thrifting. Go find some good sales. There are ways to manage that. And I felt like she just didn't care.
Well, and my problem too is that he communicated very clearly to her that he had writer's block. And so to know that he had writer's block and that he's got a couple banked up, but he doesn't have enough for forever. So you may not know where your next paycheck is going to come from to be able to afford a lot of this stuff. So it's some immaturity, but he really didn't put his foot down with a lot of it either. So,
Yeah.
I mean, there was a little bit of a bothersome on both ends for me, because if it was my money, I would have been, this is all we have to survive on for quite some time. Let's not go and blow it all here. But
You're
I mean, I
nicer than me,
understand.
because I would have just said no. I'd have said, no, I'm not buying that. Yes, I do think you should have bought a car that your child can ride in. Obviously, you're about to be a dad. Now,
Yes.
it didn't have to be a minivan, but it
No.
could have been. It could have been an SUV, whatever. But it could have even been a sedan. Yeah.
I mean, there's only one child, so
Right. There were certain things that make sense, but let that man eat his steak. I'm going to come back to that because that made me mad. I was like, are you serious?
What's bad,
I was
though,
at that point.
definitely her reaction was not the right way, for sure.
No, let that man eat his steak.
I feel like we need to buy you a steak to get over this.
I eat steak very often, actually. But even if it was a salad, let that man eat his salad. He took you to this nice, fancy dinner, and then you dog him for what he wants to eat, and you're not even paying the bill. It ain't like you're paying for his meal and he ordered the most expensive thing. That might be a different conversation. I've experienced that, but you're going to let that man eat his steak.
Well, and my thing too, also, that I didn't really care for is that it almost seemed like she pushed him away from making friends. I mean, she encouraged him to make friends with her friends, but it really wasn't, oh, go hang out at the bingo hall after city council and make some friends tonight. It was.
I kept getting tickled at all the comparisons to the big city and the small town, and him just being like, what did I get myself into? I just kept getting tickled because I was like, I know exactly what you mean. Oh my gosh.
Well, and then we get to the scene where Lexi, she was caught holding hands with Rodney, which is her ex-boyfriend, also her best friend's now boyfriend.
Correct.
Weird situation.
Well, you know, in a small town, everybody dates everybody.
Yes, but that bothered me, and even her explanation later on didn't make a lot of sense to me.
Thank you. That made me really mad.
I'm not gonna go and hold hands with my ex-boyfriend just because he's upset.
No, I don't hold my mom's hand when she's upset. I might. There's a difference in, like, you hold someone's shoulder because they're crying or something, but you don't hold hands.
No, I don't have any explanation for that.
No, I don't either, and she didn't either. That's what made me even more mad. No. She did not provide an adequate explanation, because I think if that scene hadn't happened and then she went to his house and we found out about that later, and I would have believed her for her explanation for going to his house, but with the hand holding, it made it look extreme.
Yes. I was waiting for the whole big reveal if she was cheating on him or something the whole time.
I was like, it's Rodney, baby. I thought the whole time I was committed to that. Well, I literally wrote on here, it's not Jeremy's baby, is it? I was committed. I was mad.
Well, and leading up to the dinner scene as well, I also found the whole thing whenever he confronted her, and before that, she was sitting up in bed crying about how she killed a cat in her dryer. It was very weird.
That was a weird scene. Especially because it didn't matter. It didn't have anything to do with the entire story.
And I guess it was just to play on the hormone situation.
That's a man writing about pregnancy. That's what that is.
Yeah, it was. I don't know.
Maybe Nicholas's real wife cried about that one night. And he thought it'd be good to put that in there. I don't know, but it was weird.
It was definitely an odd scene for sure. And then we go to dinner where he's basically still keeping the secret, has not really confronted her about seeing her holding hands with Rodney. And that makes me mad, though, when a man holds something in and wants to say something about it, but is waiting for you to say something about it. This situation, completely understandable, because I feel like he was waiting for her to give her an opportunity to be like, hey, I went and hung out with Rodney today. I think, honestly, if she would have done that, it probably would have made it better a little bit for him. But I hate the whole thing of I'm going to keep this secret, not tell you for no reason whatsoever.
Well, I think that's what built up the suspicion. I'm sure that's why it was written that way. But I think he was trying to convince himself also that he was overreacting. He was looking into it too much. And then if he confronted her about it, it would be him overreacting. And, I think he had to build himself up to actually confronting her. I walked up on the boardwalk and been like, what are y'all doing? Because I'm crazy. So,
I probably would have too, to be honest.
Why are you touching my pregnant fiance's wife's hand? Don't touch her.
Well, and not only that, but then at dinner, she was really awkward afterwards too. I still don't really know if I believe her full explanation, to be honest, because she was just so weird about the whole situation.
You just speak ill of the dead, but I don't like her.
I really think she may have cheated on him at some point and just was trying to cover her tracks and have an explanation, and then just conveniently she passed away, so then he really didn't have any more questions to it.
That's so morbid, but I think you might be right.
I mean, there's no way between that
She
scene and the
conveniently
awkwardness.
passed away.
I mean, conveniently for the storyline. I mean, it came out wrong.
She conveniently passed away.
Convenient for the storyline.
Convenient for her, not for him.
For her covering her tracks.
That's the perfect way to avoid having to spill your secrets. Oh, that was funny.
Well, and then we get the email that says that the baby is not his, the first one that comes through, which we end up finding out that he has had fertility problems. So again, still to me a little fishy that he never thought he was going to have kids, and then all of a sudden she randomly ends up pregnant after 6 weeks of them sleeping together. So...
Well, and after you told me that there's a first book, I feel in that first book, when he actually gets the news, we probably see his initial reaction of, I can't be a dad. There's no way that's my baby. Because no matter how committed, how in love you are with somebody, if you've been told medically you cannot have children, and then you find out you're allegedly someone's father, you're going to have that thought. Are we sure it's my baby? So I feel we missed that probably in the first book because he didn't have any of those thoughts until the email. And even after the email, he really didn't have that many thoughts about it. And the whole time I was thinking, this ain't your baby, man. This ain't your baby. It's Rodney's.
Well, I thought the entire time that he was a little too chill about it, and that's why I don't think he ever had that reaction. I think he just accepted that I love this girl. She's not lying to me. I've been hanging out with her for 6 weeks, so it's mine. But
that must be a lovely way to live your life. My trust issues could never.
I do have to say that the whole fertility thing even more solidified to me that there may have been a situation where she cheated on him, and we just may not know nor ever know that that was actually the case. I mean, because it could have been a one-time fling thing, and to say their goodbyes to each other, some crap that they made up in their mind that made sense to them. But
part of the writing, when she kept talking about what she wanted the baby to have, she kept very clearly saying all the prominent features to be hers. And I was thinking, you probably want that because it ain't his baby. You don't want him to find out it's not his baby. I feel bad because I think it might really be his baby, but I was convinced the entire story it wasn't.
I'm going to be honest, I'm still convinced that's not his. I mean, even
we'll never know.
I just think he maybe is just too good of a man to question it after she passes and just raises her as his own. And I think maybe she chose to kind of do that because she figured he would be a better father.
Well, Rodney wasn't a bad guy. Although, I will say that when Rachel went missing, my first thought was he done killed her.
Same. I thought the same thing because it was really suspicious circumstances, so I consider that as well. I
thought Rodney and Lexi might have got rid of her together, to be honest with you.
I jumped to that conclusion a little bit later. There was some kind of line or something that she had said that made me a little fishy about it. And nobody seemed that concerned with her disappearing either.
Except for Doris.
Yes, and so that was what also really made me question the whole thing because, I mean, she just pops away and everybody's like, oh, it's a normal Tuesday. Let's just continue on.
It was weird. It was very weird.
And it was multiple days, so I feel like there could have been a bolo out for her or something to say, hey, panic.
Yeah.
But it honestly, nobody seemed very concerned by it whatsoever.
No, not at all. Everyone kept saying she just wouldn't up and leave. But there was no efforts they were doing to look for her, nothing. And then, guess what? She did just up and leave. So I was like, what are we doing? This doesn't make any sense.
And I get why that storyline was there. I feel like it focused a little too much on Rachel for a few chapters. And
I agree.
I don't feel like she was as significant as she should have been. I really feel they should have played into that a little bit more rather than his writing story. I feel like it should have been more so about she may still be in love with this guy. This girl that she's grown up with is jealous of her. I feel like that would have probably made more of and to build up kind of thing to the big moment that she dies and, passes on.
But see, I think he didn't do that because maybe he wanted to leave that open-ended. Did she really tell us the truth, or will we never know? Because if he had built up to it, then it would, you know what I mean? I feel like he slightly hinted throughout the whole thing that maybe there's more we don't know, but he didn't want to fully commit to it. I don't know.
I feel like it would have been cute to have that moment of that whole back and forth, oh, I'm jealous of you, you know, blah, blah, blah. And then after she passes and he starts raising the child, to come back and be like, oh, we're going to go to Uncle Rodney's and Aunt Rachel's house. You know, it's something to have a moment together, but we didn't get anything like that.
No, we did not.
And then we get the story after him and Lexi get in a fight and she denies anything happened with Rodney, especially when she goes to his house after Rachel disappears and all that.
It's that I never slept with him before. Jeremy didn't say that, ma'am. Jeremy said that you lied about going over there. Why'd you jump to sex? Also, Rachel at one point says, I know they've never slept together. Girl, how do you know that? Why are you so concerned about them if you truly believe they've never slept together?
Mm-hmm.
Come on now. You're 32 years old. Grow up. No. Mm-mm.
Yeah, and not only that, but my thought is if she was so quick to sleep with Jeremy after only 6 weeks of knowing him, how has she never had sex before with somebody?
She had a one-night stand with Mr. Renaissance, ended up pregnant. Yeah, I don't believe that. And no judgment to her, but I just don't believe that she didn't ever.
Yeah.
Or at least fool around. Something. They did something. Enough to make Rachel jealous, so.
Yes. And the other thing, after he gets mad and starts driving around town, he ends up at the graveyard and the mayor ends up falling. That part was so weird to me.
That was weird.
Story he starts telling in the graveyard. There was several spots where I'm just, what is happening here?
I thought, is the mayor in love with her too? I was like, come on. She can't be that great. She's the town's librarian.
Well, the mayor had been established as like maybe like her uncle relationship or her best friend growing, you know, something that may have made more sense, but the mayor was one or two other interactions, and one of them was, oh, I'm going to get a famous astronaut to come to your parade.
The mayor was weird, and I didn't like it. I thought the moral of his story was, you're going to have to accept the fact that your wife is popular in town. That's what I thought the moral of the story was. I mean, everybody in love with her. I don't mean popular. Like,
I didn't get a moral to the story. I just, after reading it, I was just, what in the world did I just read? Kind of reaction. I was very confused.
I meant to also add, and I just saw a note about it, but we talked about how she was manipulative. In the scene where she talks about she's not going to let him invite his family to the wedding.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I was like, no, you gotta go, bro. You gotta go. And by his family, I don't even mean like extended family. I mean his literal brothers and their wives.
Yes.
How are you not going to invite them to your wedding? How does that make sense? But the mayor gets to come?
Yes.
Jed gets to come and be the ordained minister? What? That was weird.
There was a lot of dictating that she did. And my thing is, too, her explanations were very odd, and she was way too meticulous with her words when she was responding to him. I felt she was thinking about every response way too much to...
It even kind of hinted at that. It says she thought through her word. Like, it was very clearly hinted to make you suspicious. And then she just died, and we don't ever know.
Yeah, he doesn't really know how she's responding to things. But to me, reading it from his perspective, it rubbed me all the wrong ways. Like,
yeah,
I don't know. Something was super fishy about her, and I still think something's fishy about her even now after her death.
In a grave.
Yes. Something's real fishy about her.
I agree.
And my biggest issue is she kept almost gaslighting him about...
No, because I literally wrote, she is gaslighting.
Yes. I mean, it just, every situation, it became, well, you're hurting me instead of, you're hurting yourself. And I mean, I think he even said at one point, somewhere in there, you're not even taking my feelings into account. And so honestly, I did not like her for most of this book. I
didn't either.
I mean, honestly, it angered me so much. And I don't know what script flipped whatsoever, because at one point it's fine and there's no problems. And I don't know if maybe he thought the way he was going with the story and just decided to switch it up because he had a writer's block and it wasn't going any further. But
I will say, I liked that Doris called her out in that one scene where they're fighting, and she's like, no, baby, you did that. That's your fault. Yes. I love that. Yes. What got me about the whole thing, too, with Rodney and Rachel, okay? Rachel is so insecure about their relationship. And I'm not saying that should mean that you can't be friends at all. And even Jeremy says that. Jeremy says, I'm not saying don't talk to him. I'm saying don't go behind my back and go to his house and don't hold his hand out in public. Like, these are simple things to not do to respect our relationship. Yeah. So if Rachel was so insecure about it, Rodney should not have been going to Lexi about that situation. He should have been going to someone else, even if it was Doris or even if it was the mayor or Jed, whoever he wants to talk to, but somebody else other than Lexi. Like, he was feeding into it, which is why I thought there really was something going on. And Lexi could have put a stop to it too.
Well, and I think there was fault, between all three of them, with Rachel, Rodney, and with Lexi. I think, first of all, Rachel knew what she was getting into with dating her best friend's ex-boyfriend. I mean, she, I'm sure, gossiped about the stories between Lexi and Rodney's relationship. So she knew the background and the foundation there. So she opened herself up to that. However, Rodney should have respected her enough if he chose to be in a relationship with her to not, he should have been doing everything under the sun to stop that flow of still communication with Lexi. It should have been immediate cutoff to make her feel better if he really did love her, which I don't personally believe that. I feel like it was a plan B situation and it wasn't. He did get his plan A, so he moved on to his plan B.
Which is awful, and Rachel should take herself somewhere else and get better. But if you're going to do that, the least you can do is respect Rachel and not overstep those boundaries. That it's not like it's that hard to do that anyways. You have other people in your life. And no one said you can't still talk to her in certain circumstances. But her coming over to your house in the middle of the night? No. Come on now. That's common sense.
And I mean, I don't think Lexi really respected Rachel enough either with the whole situation, because she should have never held his hand on the pier. She never should have gone to his house. I mean, there should have been none of those secretive kind of meetings. And those
are just the two that Jeremy caught. How do we not know that there's not more?
Yes, absolutely.
When she said, "Are you stalking me?" If I was Jeremy, I'd have said, "I shouldn't have to, but yeah, I am."
And not only that, but I thought he was really trying to do something cute for her. And then, lo and behold, she's out there possibly cheating on him. I mean...
the first one, the second one, I got tickled. He kept, in the scene, he's trying to talk himself out of going to look for her. And I was like, go get her. Go get her. She ain't where she's supposed to be. Go find her.
The lies is the biggest part of it that really bothered me. I really feel like all she had to say is, hey, I'm going to go check on Rodney because I'm sure he's distraught about this whole situation. Him and Rachel are some of my best friends. I just want to check on him. I think Jeremy would have been accepting of that. But instead, the lies, and then trying to cover up her lies on top of that.
That's what I was going to say. I think that's what really got it. If she didn't know at the time of the phone call that she was going over to Rodney's and she decided afterwards, okay, maybe you could explain that away. But when he gave you the opportunity to tell him where you had been, and she knew he knew, and she still tried to double down. That's what a liar does. And I know that from experience. And that is not acceptable. So I don't trust her.
No, and I mean, just because the relationship is fresh doesn't mean that you can't still be open with them. You can't still try to communicate with them. And that was a huge, huge, huge red flag to me. It really did not sit well with me whatsoever.
Well, especially because then my mind starts going, like if I was Jeremy, I would start thinking, this is how she acts in a relationship. Wait till she's a mother of my child. And then I'd be concerned about how she's raising my kid. You know what I'm saying? There are other implications to that. And also then when she's your wife, you don't want to look like a fool around town with your wife out here sneaking around with Rodney. Come on now.
Well, and also how many people knew about it and just didn't say anything either.
When the mayor said we've all seen it, everybody knew before I knew. I can tell you that for sure.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm not the type of person that's going to stay quiet. If I know somebody's cheating on somebody, I may create a fake Facebook page and share it with them or something. But I mean, somebody's
you
going
would create a fake Facebook page. That is so Emily.
Yeah, because I mean, I would want somebody to tell me. So I don't feel like somebody else should have to be in that situation. And to have all these people that are starting to get to know him and realize that he's such a good guy and he's really trying to take care of her and her baby and all this stuff. And then she's secretly sneaking around on him the entire time and nobody's saying anything to him. It didn't sit well.
I was kind of surprised Doris didn't call her out on that too. Which she called her out about Mr. Renaissance, but I was kind of surprised she didn't call her out about Rodney too.
Yeah. Yeah. So he ends up going off for his bachelor party. So we end up finding out that Lexi had been secretly writing Jeremy's family the whole time, which I did find that was probably the sweetest thing she did the entire book. To be
I
honest.
agree.
I
thought
mean,
I loved that, and I was like, man, I hate her, but that was really cool.
I thought that was really sweet.
Not even just his mom, but her new sister-in-laws too. I thought that was nice.
Yes. Honestly, the one good thing Alvin did was note that Jeremy had been changed, and all the stuff that Lexi was doing to control him. That was the only good thing I could say about Alvin whatsoever. But
I can understand where Alvin was coming from if you watched your friend literally uproot their entire lives, change into a whole different person, barely talk to you, barely talk to anybody. I can understand, especially while I was reading about how possessive and controlling and manipulative she seemed. Then I thought, oh, this might be like a domestic violence situation. I was leaning into it with Alvin. Now, the way that Alvin went about it is not the right way to do it. You shouldn't be sending mysterious emails like that. He could have just texted him and said, Rachel told me this, and it would have been the same dramatic effect.
I think he was only doing it, though, to maybe not have his best friend mad at him, which still ended up happening.
That's a coward's way out, though.
It is.
If you know information and you're going to state it and potentially ruin someone's life, then say it with your chest.
As I just said, I'd create a fake Facebook page.
I stand by that, though. Say it with your chest. Admit it. If you're the one that did it, own up to it. That's better than pretending.
My thing is, I really don't want to put myself, like, in that situation where I would go and create a fake Facebook page. I feel like I would... morally, I just could not say anything, but I also don't want to continue to be involved in the situation. So, because I feel like if I would personally go up to somebody and say, hey, your wife's cheating on you, then it would be like, well, Emily said this, and then it would be a whole, Emily's involved the whole entire time, and then, that person involves me with their friends talking crap about me because I told them that person's going to be like, oh, well, this person's on my side.
But the truth hurts, and that's too bad. But Emily did out you. That's your own fault. You should have been better at hiding secrets, I guess.
Well, it is, but to me, I don't want to be a part of that after the fact. Like, I'm sorry. I just feel like you need to know because I feel like...
Does it matter if you're actually close with the person or if they're a stranger? Would you do it differently depending on that? If it was me as opposed to somebody you don't talk to on the regular?
No. If it was one of my best friends, absolutely. I would tell you to your face. I've told my best friends.
Okay, that's what I'm talking about. But... I'm not talking about strangers or people that I barely know. That's different. I'm talking about, this is his best friend.
Yeah, if it was like an acquaintance, just somebody maybe I've worked with for a few years and just, we're not that close or anything. Maybe somebody like them, I would probably... be like, hey, just so you know, somebody's cheating. But I mean, if I'm really close with them and I feel like I have that connection with them, I will be blatantly honest with them face to face because, I mean, you can hate me all you want, but I'm pretty good about picking up what somebody's throwing down. Okay. So
I keep coming back to the Rodney and Rachel thing, but you're right. We get to this scene, we get into this big fight before he actually goes to his bachelor party. And she still does not really give an adequate explanation of anything. And that to me really... I don't know. That made me feel more for Alvin. I understand your concern. I can see what he means. However, that doesn't mean that that's the right way to do it. But I was on board with it. I completely agree. Was that really his kid? I didn't believe it either. And I was like, yeah, something's happening here.
Well, I'm kind of curious what Rachel said to Alvin as well. And not only that, but what was she doing in New York with Alvin, some random dude she may have met one or two times?
Because all these little girls in small towns love it when the big city tourists come in and they want to hook up with them and then follow them back to the big city.
But then if she did that, she can't really be mad at Rodney anymore.
Exactly! She said she didn't do anything with him, though. They just talked all night. Girl, you don't go to New York City just to talk all night.
No.
They're liars. I don't trust any of them. But that's probably because I'm from a small town, and I know they'll lie right through their teeth every single day of the week.
I did not like Lexi's reaction whenever she found out that it was Alvin and Rachel. She was so, you should cut off your best friend. He's trying to tear us apart. And then her best friend, who's the one that started it all, comes and shows up and she's like, oh, it's okay. We're all good. We'll be BFFs again. And
on top of that, she said that Alvin couldn't be in the wedding anymore. And then Rachel is still the maid of honor. And I was like, what's the difference, babe?
Yeah.
Especially because Rachel knows her. And Rachel's going to spend time around Jeremy also. Alvin has never hardly spent time around Lexi at all. So it looks even worse for Rachel because she even knew him. And why would you go tell his best friend that the fiance had been pregnant before and he didn't know?
Yeah.
That's only causing trouble and you know it.
I mean, I get it, but if I was best friends with you and somebody else and you started some crap and I could not cut you off and then sit there and not cut off the other person too. I mean, to me, it was the same stone thrown just by two different people, and yet only one person got the punishment from throwing the stone.
I agree.
So I didn't like it.
I agree.
A lot of this book honestly made me angry about, especially centered around Lexi. I mean, I think there was 2 times I actually liked her. 2 times.
I would agree. I'm not even sure there were 2. There was 1 for sure. And I will say, and this is jumping to the end, but we're making our way there. I did really like the way the book ended. It was awful that she died. I'm not saying I liked that she died. Mm-hmm. I did like, though, that we had a full circle back to the cemetery and with the lights and everything with the daughter. I knew that was coming as soon as you started talking about night terrors. I was like, okay, that's how the book's going to end, which is a good ending. But her dying threw me for a loop. Didn't even like her. And then I was sobbing when they were like, get him out of here. And the doctor was giving her CPR. And I was shook. I was at my mom's house and I was reading it. And I had to go because all my nieces were all around. And so I had to go lock myself in the bathroom to be able to finish reading it because I was just sobbing. And I was like, my mom's going to think something's wrong with me. My niece came in there and she was like, Auntie, what's wrong? And I was like, it's just my book. She was like,
you
okay.
Texted me and you thought it was the baby the whole time that was going to pass. And they did build that up.
And also, the risk was already higher anyways, regardless of the fact that she had a miscarriage previously and that he obviously had issues as well with his fertility and stuff. On top of that, they were also older. So the risks were all there for the baby not to have issues at some point. And we kept talking about that cord that didn't attach, thankfully. But then all of a sudden, she just croaks. I mean, just laying there on the table, push it, and then just out.
So, about the graveyard scene at the very end. The problem I had with that is I feel like there should have been another scene somewhere else where Lexi and Jeremy went to the graveyard. And there may be in the first book, don't get me wrong. But I feel like somewhere in the pregnancy, there should have been another scene. It said the scene with the mayor. I mean, it could have been the scene where they were in the graveyards, seeing the spirits or something.
Well, I almost feel like it should have been like a regular occurrence. Once a week, they went to the graveyard to see her parents or something, like and built to that. I think it says she might go, but it doesn't say they go together.
Mm. And it didn't fully bring it full circle for me because there wasn't mention of that in this book. Yeah. Again, there may have been in the first book, but really there was no mention.
Somebody's got to read that first book and tell us because I want to know. But I don't really want to read it because I'm kind of mad still and I don't want to get to know her anymore. So somebody needs to read it for me and tell me. And it's called what? True Believer, in case anybody needs the name.
True Believer. So the other thing too, there was a lot of scenes that I literally, there's no comment really. It's just worth noting that it was there, I guess. But the wedding scene and the odd scene with the horse at the end.
That was weird. I thought it was weird too.
There's just so many, and I don't know if this was something trying to relate back to the supernatural or
I don't know.
It was weird and I don't know. I really don't have a comment for it because I don't quite understand what happened. So I can't explain it. So I don't know.
It was very, very strange. Also, we get I was just thinking about the little things. They put little snippets in there that never really connected back to anything. And towards the end, he says, I love you more than there are fishes in the sea and higher than the moon. She looked at him curiously and he shrugged. That's what my mom used to say to us when we were little. And she said, well, you say that to Claire too. And he says, every day. And we get it at the end. He says it one time to her. But that didn't really add anything to the story. We get these little snippets, but we didn't really set it up to be big. We just said it once. Here it is, gone. It was just weird.
Well, I have no clue what the horse had to do with any of it whatsoever.
No, the horse was literally... First of all, why was the horse even there? That's what I want to know. The area they described for the wedding is not at all where a horse would be.
No, how I imagined a random horse walking up to you is the wild horse beaches that you can go and visit or something. But This is North
And that's not in
Carolina.
North Carolina. Yeah, I think that's not in North Carolina.
I don't know. It was so odd. I don't know. And honestly,
Yeah.
to me, that's a topic on its own. He could just talk about these odd occurrences he's having with the horses. That could have been a story the whole time. Or the mayor's story about the tree. He could have literally wrote about all these weird things.
And we make it such a big deal about Doris's journal. Such a big deal about reading the whole thing, and we're going to do this and we're going to do that, yada yada. And she wants him to write about it, and yada yada. And then he does find, obviously, the little entry about Lexi, and then that's it. There's a mention briefly later that he did write about it, but we made this such a big deal. And
Yeah.
Rachel could have just told Alvin, and Alvin literally could have just said that she'd been pregnant before, and that would have done the job. I don't know. I feel like everything was made to be such a big deal, and then it just kind of died out.
So Rachel shows up at Lexi's house, and Lexi's able to forgive her and everything before the wedding. But then we end up finding out afterwards, pretty much, was it at the wedding or right after the wedding, Rodney and Rachel gets engaged.
Yeah.
I feel like this all happened in a week where she ran away, the whole world fell apart. He's devastated, supposedly, to the point where Lexi has to visit him. And then they get married, and then Rodney and Rachel's like, hey, we're engaged too. I mean,
I guess now that she's married, she's officially off the market, and so Rodney decided he was going to move on.
it wasn't appropriate timing for me.
You know, and I'm dogging a lot of this book, but I actually liked it. And as as I was reading it, I was like, I've got to get back to it. I've got to know what happens next. It was very fast paced, kept me entertained. I was a little let down by the ending simply because I did think there was going to be like this big reveal that never happened and she just died. But I did actually like this book. So this is all very negative this whole time, but I actually did like the book.
Well, it's like you said about the train wreck.
Yeah, you cannot look away. That is exactly what it is.
Honestly, it kept making me mad. She did, so I just kept wanting to read it to see if I ever actually liked her. I don't know. I
kept reading it because I was like, he's going to expose her. He's going to expose her.
I was waiting for the big secret to come around, too. I'm either going to get this huge secret from her that I knew this whole entire time, but I need to know whether or not it's said, or I'm going to end up liking her, and neither happens. And then it also made me mad, too, that Lexi, after Rodney and Rachel get engaged, she's like, oh, they're really rushing it, aren't they? Like, girl, in 6 weeks, we're pregnant, engaged, and having the guy move in with you.
Literally. If that's not a small town, though, to be like, oh, I did it, but that doesn't matter. You shouldn't do it. I didn't like her. I liked the book. I did not like Lexi.
Well, and the other thing that was weird is that the editor makes the comment that he thinks, while they're dealing with all of the stuff with the pregnancy, the editor thinks that the entire time Jeremy's trying to write a big story. Again, that was odd because it was just mentioned, and then the big story ended up kind of being Doris's journal, one time mentioned, and then done. I don't know. Something was weird with mentioning that. I feel like there was a lot of incompleteness with a lot of it, but I mean, it kept me coming back. So I mean, yes.
Yeah, I guess maybe that was the way it was written to keep you entertained, and I felt like everything, it just kept happening. Like the next shoe just kept dropping, and there was never really a resolution to any of the shoes dropping. They just were falling.
Also confused me is whenever Lexi offers to move to New York so he can write because she thinks that it has to do with where he's at, that he can't write. And then all of a sudden he miraculously comes up with an idea.
And his writer block is just cured.
Yeah. Oh, she's willing to move for me, so I can now write.
Also, he was so quick to say, I'm good. And I was thinking, you hate it here. Give it some thought, bro.
But she made you pretty much give up everything, including your savings. So
you might need to move back home. You got no money.
Yeah.
It was weird. I agree.
I did really chuckle a little bit about how Jeremy was panicking when she goes into labor and he decides to do an everything shower, basically.
I didn't like her. And I'm not super into the pregnancy trope in general when I read books, but I actually really loved getting to see his point of view of that entire scenario, because typically we get the woman's point of view.
Yes.
And as women, we know about that point of view, but I loved even more that he did that. And then he was freaking out at the hospital, and he was like, she's literally about to have a baby. Would y'all take this serious? And then when Doris comes in and they're yapping about him and they're saying, can you believe he did that? And Doris tells him, don't worry, my husband did it too. I love that. I mean, you never know how you're going to react.
Well, it's not only, I don't think it's just panic. I mean, when I asked Trevor to do something, I gotta go take a shower, and he's in there for 800 hours longer than he normally is to go take this shower because I asked him to do something. So it's almost like, hey, I'm asking you to take me to the hospital because I'm pushing out our child. Let's avoid it and take a shower.
That's funny. I got tickled. When she said he was clipping his nails, I was like, what? That's even worse than a long shower. First of all, that's gross. Go do that somewhere else. It was so weird.
So then we get where Lexi gives birth and she ends up passing away due to a rare condition.
No, I should also say that I've dogged her this entire time, but I cried during her death scene.
Her dying was, the whole entire time I was thinking it was a child because that's pretty much what was led to believe. But as soon as she said she wanted to adopt and have more kids, I was like, oh, she's out. She's gone. She's the one that's going to die. And then for a second, I thought maybe both of them were going to die. So then it was going to be even more of a devastation. But I did tear up in that scene as well. There was some emotion to it. It didn't make me cry as bad as the other book that I read the other day, but it definitely was a sad situation, especially considering Jeremy didn't want to go see the baby afterwards. That really broke me up.
That was so sad.
Go see her. Just go see her. She lost her mom just as well as you lost your wife. But as soon as and the line that really broke me up, I think, was kind of the point where
we're talking about it. I'm getting teary.
But he said that he was saying goodbye to his wife and hello to his baby. And so that really broke me up a little bit.
Yeah. Well, because of the way that the prologue was set up, where it doesn't talk about the daughter, or I didn't remember talking about the daughter, that's when she started talking about siblings and yada, whatever else. That's where I thought, oh my gosh, they're both going to die. Because the prologue didn't mention the daughter, and so I thought it was setting it up to him being back alone, or whatever. So, I mean, I'm not saying that it's good that Lexi died anyways, but thankfully he didn't lose his wife and his daughter, because that would have been awful.
Well, the other part is that the whole book, I thought that at first sight meant that he had fallen for Lexi so quickly. And so the entire time that was what was on my mind. And then at the very end, he makes the comment that he falls in love with Claire at first sight. And so that kind of brought the whole thing together. But the entire time I thought it was going to be Lexi. And
I think it was both.
Yes, in a way. As soon as he made that connection with Claire, it was more described to me as an instant connection rather than out of necessity. And so to me, the whole relationship with Lexi was necessity, where Claire was love at first sight.
Well, I got teary-eyed because he said he couldn't look at her without thinking about Lexi, and then when he actually looks at her, he realizes this is the only piece of Lexi he has left, so he can love her because of that.
Yes.
In spite of it. Of that.
Yes.
So I really liked that too, because I feel like I've heard that in the similar circumstances in real life when someone loses their wife during childbirth. So that was interesting to see that from his point of view too.
Yeah, and then we get to the ending with Claire and Jeremy where they're in the graveyard after she starts having night terrors. And I was thinking that she was still a child a little bit, like baby, not talking, because he talked about how he had lack of sleep and everything because of her nightmares. So I was thinking it was just one of those after newborn, because it doesn't
5 years later.
Well, it said the date, but I didn't put two and two together at the time. I just thought it was another journal entry of him writing shortly after her death or something. But I just thought she was still a child, baby wise. And then whenever he starts talking about how she was gonna having conversations with her and taking her to the graveyard, we're a little bit later, but even then, it was still an odd ending for Nicholas Sparks' book to end up as a supernatural kind of underline. I mean, Doris, okay, I could get behind. Being able to predict things, okay, I can get that. But the whole seeing the ghost
ending where something just gets thrown out of left field and it doesn't make any sense.
So Colleen Hoover, we are actually going to read a couple of her books in the upcoming episodes. We are going to start with It Ends With Us, and then we will read It Starts With Us just because it makes sense. And we're not reading one standalone novel that could or could not be a sequel.
Yeah, you definitely have to read It Ends With Us before you read It Starts With Us.
Yes. So we are going to start reading those and discussing them next week and the following week. Again, we're playing into the theme of the sad topic, but we hope that you guys have enjoyed our episodes and trying a little bit different than what we have been reading. So we're excited to continue going through those. We again announce a month in advance on our Facebook page what our books topics are. So that gives you plenty of time to buy the books or read the book. We also have announcements on our website regarding what we're reading, as well as links to be able to listen to our episodes. You can listen to them as well on Apple Podcasts, Spotify Podcasts, Patreon, or YouTube. We have had a couple technical errors with a couple of our last episodes with video, but anything that we're able to upload video to, we will. And if not, it will just be the audio. You can also see us on TikTok for some of our bloopers. But my overall rating for the book is a 4 out of 5. I thought that it did not have the usual Nicholas Sparks tragedy as it normally does. So it didn't hit the same as other Nicholas Sparks books for me.
I would agree with your rating, but I think the reason the tragedy didn't hit as hard is because we didn't like the character. I think had Lexi been more likable, it would have hit much harder.
Yes, but I did not expect her to die. I expected the baby to die, so I think the entire time I was leading up to that thought that, I have to prepare myself for this child to die.
Yeah, I texted Emily and I said, if you told me to read this book and this baby dies, I'm going to beat you up.
She did. She threatened violence. But it just didn't hit the same as other Nicholas Sparks books. I just think there were so many odd scenes that it was hard for me because I was still getting kind of
focused.
Yeah, there was just so much whiplash of what does that scene even mean? I don't get why it's here. So I think it was a little bit of that for me. There was some scenes that just did not make any, especially the horse scene. That scene threw me all the way off that I don't think I could recover. I couldn't recover. It was a little difficult for me to get in, for sure.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think 4 out of 5 is a good rating for it. I enjoyed it and I would recommend reading it, but just to be prepared for those sorts of things that we pointed out as you read it.
Yes. And even though we hated on it, I usually start out reading it thinking it's a 4 and then kind of go up or down from there. So to me, that means there was some ups, there was some downs that just kind of kept my rating around 4 throughout the whole thing.
Yeah, and for me, if I read multiple books by the same author, I also place in my head my favorite book up from that author to the lowest. And so that kind of affected my rating too, because there were so many of his that I love that this one was just a little bit of a letdown. But I think it was just different. I don't think it was bad. I just think it was different than what we were expecting.
Yes. Well, if you guys have any questions or comments, you're welcome to email us at karlempodcast.com. Again, you can visit our website, karlempodcast.com. We have inquiry boxes and everything. If you have book recommendations you'd like us to read, we're very open to them. Just anytime you want to comment on our Facebook post too, and just let us know what you think about our episode, feel free to do so. You can comment on YouTube and Patreon as well. Mm-hmm. So if you have any comments you want to say or opinions of what you thought about our episode, please let us know. Again, so if you've listened to this point, we appreciate you guys tuning in, and we'll see you on the next episode where we'll Karl them like we read them.